Chapter 2 The Will of Wally. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 2 of my What If Steven Raised May story. If you're new to this series, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. And for those of you that have seen the first chapter, you're about to see what I meant by both Ash and May having major parts in this story. Now let's begin the next chapter. A new day has arrived, and young Sapphire has embarked on her journey to Rustburg City in order to see her grandfather before she begins her Pokemon journey in earnest. Meanwhile, just outside of Littleroot, there are two other 10-year-olds embarking on journeys of their own. One is Ash Ketchum, who, just like in canon, is pulling into Littleroot on a ship, anxious to get his unwell Pikachu to the Pokemon Center. The other boy, however, is making his way to Littleroot from Petalburg. His tea-green hair sways in the wind as he stops at the top of a hill. Hands on his knees, he takes deep, slow breaths in an attempt to catch his breath. He'd known that getting to Littleroot in his condition wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't expected it to be this difficult. Raising his head, he spots that he's close to an outcrop and moves closer, hoping to see how much longer he has left to go. Looking out over the landscape before him, he's relieved to see that he's much closer than he thought. Turning around, he continues down the path towards the town. Before he can reach the town, however, he hears a loud shout of "Help!" Turning away from the path, the boy makes his way as fast as he can towards the cries of distress. After a few minutes, he comes across a scarp with a brown leather bag lying on the grass next to it. Carefully, he picks up the bag and looks around for whoever the owner could be. His answer soon comes in the form of a middle-aged man calling out to him from the tree next to the scarp. "Professor Birch!" "Wally, am I ever glad to see you! Quickly, in my bag are some Pokeballs. I need you to grab one and call out the Pokemon inside." Nodding in understanding, Wally grabs the first ball he sees and tosses it in the air. In a flash of white light, a Tropius emerges from the Pokeball. With the Pokemon out of its ball, Wally turns to Birch, asking what he wants him to do now. Birch tells him to have Tropius use one of its moves, causing Wally to look pained. Hesitantly, he forces out a question about what moves Tropius knows, and what he's even supposed to be using them on. Birch blinks before scratching the back of his head in embarrassment, only now realizing that Wally can't actually see the reason he's currently stuck in a tree. He points down, directing Wally's attention towards the pack of 3 Poochyena circling him. He tells Wally to have Tropius use Magical Leaf to chase the Poochyena away. Nodding in understanding, Wally turns to Tropius, telling it to do just that, only for the fruit Pokemon to completely ignore him. Still dangling from the tree, Birch calls out to his Pokemon, telling it to stop being stubborn and help. They have bigger problems to worry about right now. Tropius gives a small huff before turning to the Poochyena and flipping its fern-like wings, summoning Magical Leaf. The trio of dog Pokemon jump back in fright from the sharp leaves before turning and running away. With the Poochyena gone, Birch climbs down from the tree, thanking Wally for his help. Wally carefully climbs down the scarp while Tropius simply jumps down. Once he's safely on the lower ground, he hands Birch his bag, while asking why he's out here in the first place, as he thought that Birch would be at his lab at this time of day. Birch's eyes widen in horrified realization as he's suddenly reminded of the reason he's out. Turning to Wally, he tells the boy that they need to hurry, startling him. Before Wally can ask for clarification, Birch is already running away, forcing Wally to go after him. Birch rushes around, occasionally pausing to call out Pikachu before continuing on. Wally wonders if Birch has lost one of the Pikachu from his lab when a pillar of electricity suddenly rises up from the tree line in front of them. Worriedly, Wally asks the professor what could be causing it. Birch's expression is pinched as he tells Wally that it must be Pikachu. The poor mouse Pokemon's electricity is reaching critical mass. It could explode at any moment. Wally's eyes widen in horror as he stumbles after Birch. Just what in the world is going on? When they reach the clearing where the electricity came from, they not only find a Pikachu looking very sick, but a boy around Wally's age with raven black hair. Birch calls out to the boy, calling him Ash, and telling him to move away from Pikachu. Ash protests, telling Birch that he has to help. Before anyone can do anything else, however, Pikachu gets up and begins to run away, causing Ash to go after it. Wally and Birch follow, only to see Pikachu going over the side of a cliff, Ash following after it. Thankfully, when they get to the cliff, they look down to see that Ash was able to grab onto a tree root sticking out of the side of the cliff. Thinking fast, Birch pulls out a length of rope from his bag, throwing one end over the cliff to allow Ash to climb up. With Ash climbing and Birch and Wally pulling, it doesn't take long for Ash to reach the top of the cliff in safety once more. Wally wipes his forehead and takes slow, steadying breaths. He gets the feeling that he's going to need to get context for all of this once they're back at the lab. However, before they can even begin to make their way back to the lab, a strange group that Ash identifies as Team Rocket show up and attempts to capture Pikachu, using a massive machine to absorb the electric mouse's energy. However, it appears that the ne'er-do-wells miscalculated exactly how much electricity Pikachu is packing, because the excess electricity that was putting it at risk alone is enough to completely fill the robot's storage capacity. So all it takes is a single, intentional thunderbolt from Pikachu to completely overload the robot, causing it to explode and sending Team Rocket blasting off. A few seconds after the danger has passed, Pikachu falls to the ground, completely knocked out. Once they're back at Birch's lab, they rush the still unconscious Pikachu to an examination room, where they hook it up to a machine that reads electricity levels. Much to everyone's relief, it's revealed that Team Rocket's robot had indeed absorbed all of Pikachu's excess electricity, returning Pikachu's levels to normal. Wally smiles as he looks at the little yellow mouse. That's such a relief. The moment is broken the moment Birch turns to Wally, thanking him for his help, but asking why he's all the way in Little Roost in the first place. Suddenly remembering why he came all this way, Wally bows to Birch and loudly asks for a Pokemon. Everyone in the room jumps at the sudden loud volume coming from the short boy. But recovering quickly, Birch asks Wally to explain what he means. Taking a calming breath, Wally begins to explain to Birch. His parents are sending him to live with some relatives in Verdanturf soon, so he came to ask if the professor could give him a starter Pokemon to take with him. Frowning sadly, Birch scratches the back of his head as he explains to Wally that he doesn't have any starter Pokemon right now. He wasn't planning on needing beginner-level Pokemon until next year for Sawyer, and the year after that for Max. That is, if... He cuts himself off, getting right back on the original topic and explaining that he hasn't bred any new starters yet. Wally deflates at the news, while Birch asks why he doesn't ask Norman. He's known his family for far longer than he's known him, and on top of that, they live in the same town. It would have been a lot easier to ask for a Pokemon from him. Wally looks Birch dead in the eye and says just one word. Max. That's all that needs to be said as Birch winces in understanding. That is entirely fair. He's about to make another suggestion when his eyes widen in sudden realization. Wait a minute. Wally, did you come all the way here by yourself? Wally looks away without saying anything, which is all the answer Birch needs. Sighing, Birch turns to Ash. He apologizes for having to ask this of him, but would he be willing to take Wally back to Petalburg once Pikachu has recovered? He explains to Ash that Wally has a lung condition that can put him in danger if not managed properly. Ash agrees easily, stating that he was planning on heading that way anyway. The next day, after Pikachu wakes up, the two boys begin to make their way to Petalburg via Oldale. That way, Ash can register for the Pokemon League right away. Knowing that Wally has some health troubles, Ash decides to take things easy, walking much slower than he usually would. While they're walking, Ash's curiosity gets the best of him, and he asks Wally what he and Birch were talking about the other day. Wally looks at him confused, prompting Ash to clarify that he's talking about the conversation the two had about Wally getting a Pokemon from that Norman guy Birch mentioned. Wally's expression turns sad as he explains to Ash that Norman is the gym leader in Petalburg. His family and Wally's have known each other for years, so they're pretty much a second family to him. Ash tilts his head at this answer, looking even more confused. If that's the case, then why didn't you go to him for a Pokemon? Slowly, Wally begins to tell Ash about Max, Norman's son. He and Wally have always been close, but after a certain incident, Norman had become really protective of his son, to the point that he wouldn't let anyone except his wife and Wally's family near Max. Max hates it. He's been complaining to Wally about feeling trapped for years. So, when Max found out that Wally was moving to Verdanturf, he begged Wally to go with him, seeing it as his one chance of getting out of Petalburg. That's why Wally went to Professor Birch for a Pokemon. Maybe if he has a Pokemon of his own, he can convince Norman to let Max come with him. But in the end, I couldn't even get a Pokemon. Ash places a hand on Wally's shoulder, telling him not to jump to conclusions. They've still got quite a ways to go before Petalburg, and he's traveling with someone that's already caught their fair share of Pokemon. Wally's eyes widen as he asks if Ash is saying what he thinks he is. Ash nods, telling Wally that he'll help him catch a Pokemon and train it before they get to Petalburg. Wally's face lights up as he thanks Ash. The two continue walking for a little longer, looking for a Pokemon that could be suitable for Wally to use as his first Pokemon. Finally, they find a Ralts in some tall grass, prompting Ash to hand over some Pokeballs to Wally before telling Pikachu to help out and listen to what the younger boy says. With a determined nod, Pikachu jumps down from Ash's shoulder to stand in front of Wally. Nervous but determined, Wally thinks back on all of the books on Pokemon training that he's read over the years. Thinking back to a specific chapter, he mutters a passage about how, when catching a Pokemon, one must weaken it in battle first. With that in mind, Wally tells Pikachu to hit Ralts with a Thunderbolt. Pikachu does just that, hitting Ralts dead on. Wally's eyes light up as he sees the sparks coming off of Ralts that are a clear indicator that it's been paralyzed. He remembers from his books that status conditions also make catching a Pokemon easier. Taking that as a sign, he grabs one of the Pokeballs that Ash had given him and throws it at the Ralts. The ball hits, sucking Ralts into it. The trio waits with bated breath as the ball shakes until it emits a burst of stars, indicating that Ralts has been caught. Wally cheers, running over to scoop up the ball. His happy cheering is suddenly cut off by a coughing fit, prompting Ash to rub his back in an attempt to help. When the coughing subsides, Wally apologizes for scaring him before asking if they can get to Oldale quickly so that they can get Ralts checked out. Ash agrees but suggests that they not rush too much, not wanting to trigger another attack. They continue down the road towards Oldale, coming across the Oldale ruins and Professor Alden on the way. After getting Ralts healed up by Nurse Joy at the Pokemon Center, Wally calls it out of its Pokeball in order to properly introduce himself to it and get to know it better, including its moves. Ash asks why Wally doesn't just use his Pokedex to check, and feels a little silly when Wally points out that he doesn't have one. Feeling embarrassed, Ash offers to let Wally use his, which he accepts gratefully. Wally examines the data that Ash's Pokedex picks up from the Ralts carefully. According to it, this Ralts is a male, and still pretty young, as the only moves he knows are Growl, Confusion, and Shadow Sneak. Wally smiles as he pats Ralts' head. In that case, I'm going to call you Satoshi. Ash blinks, asking if Wally is going to be nicknaming every Pokemon he catches. Wally shifts nervously, asking if that's bad. Ash shakes his head. It's not bad, just rare. Wally's actually the first person he's met who names their Pokemon at all. Deciding to rest the night at the Pokemon Center and get started on their training in the morning, they head over to the cafeteria to get some dinner. While there, they run into Professor Alden again, who invites them to come look at his research. When he explains to the boys about his research requiring the study of ancient Pokemon, Wally asks if he means Pokemon like Relicanth. Alden smiles and nods, pleased to see someone so young understanding his research. Wally exclaims that of course he knows about Relicanth. It's said to be one of the longest living Pokemon in the world. The oldest lived to be over 100 years old, and that's not even getting into just how long the species has remained exactly the same with no evolutionary changes. Whoa, you sure know your stuff. Wally deflates a little. Well, it's a sea creature, and it is really impressive that it lives for so long. Before their conversation can continue, however, the power to the room cuts out. Soon after, a group of people in red, hooded uniforms enter the room, demanding that Professor Alden take them to the ruins. While Alden initially refuses, he agrees when the group threaten Ash, Wally, and Nurse Joy. While Alden is dragged away, Ash, Wally, and Nurse Joy are thrown into a storage room. Knowing that they need to get the power back on and help Alden, they look for a way out, finding it in the form of an air vent. After having Satoshi remove the gate with confusion, Ash enters the vent, while telling Wally and Nurse Joy to wait in the storage room. However, Wally isn't willing to simply wait and follows Ash into the vent with Satoshi. Ash, worried about Wally's lungs, asks if it's really okay for him to be crawling through a dusty vent like this. Wally tells him not to worry, as these vents look like they've been recently cleaned. Besides, he can't let Ash do everything. If he's going to prove to Norman that he can protect himself and Max, then he can't let something like a vent hold him back. With the help of their Pokemon, the two boys manage to find their way to the foyer of the center. There, Ash finds the Master Key, while Wally switches the power to the center's generators. After letting Nurse Joy out of the storage room, they rush to the ruins to help Alden. However, with them going slower due to Wally's lung condition, by the time they arrive, the thugs have already left, leaving Alden behind with the sacred treasures. The boys ask the professor if he's okay, feeling relieved as he tells them that he is. He explains that whatever the thugs were after, it wasn't in the ruins, so they simply left. Leading the boys into the now opened sealed chamber, he places the sacred treasures in their proper places once more. As he does so, the sun begins to rise behind them, shining through the open doorway and onto the stone pillar that had been the door. The moment the light hits it, the markings on the stone begin to glow, and it slides back even further, revealing a second entrance, leading down with some stairs. Descending down the stone steps, they find themselves in an underground chamber with a lake in the center, filled with Relicanth. Alden is thrilled with this discovery, wondering if this chamber could be a nesting ground for the ancient Pokemon. Returning to the center, Ash and Wally collect their things. Wishing Alden good luck with his research, they bid him goodbye before continuing on. Before they get too far, however, Ash suggests that they do a little training. Wally's eyes light up with determination as he nods. He's going to need all the training he can get if he's going to convince Norman. Finding a nice open area, the two boys face each other with their Pokemon. After confirming with Wally that he's ready, Ash opens the battle with a Thunderbolt. Wally responds quickly, telling Satoshi to dodge it. The little Ralts leaps out of the way of the attack, before turning to Pikachu. At Wally's command, he executes a Shadow Sneak on Pikachu. The attack hits, knocking Pikachu slightly off balance. However, the electric mouse recovers quickly as Ash calls for a quick attack. Wally tries to tell Satoshi to dodge again, but the little psychic type is too slow, resulting in him taking a hit from Pikachu. Wally tells Satoshi to counter with confusion. Satoshi's eyes glow under his hair as he envelops Pikachu in a glowing blue energy before throwing the electric type into a tree. Ash calls out, asking if Pikachu is okay. After getting an affirmative, Ash tells Pikachu to use Thunderbolt. Pikachu launches the attack and it hits Satoshi dead on. That final attack proves to be too much for Satoshi, and he falls over completely defeated. Wally rushes over to his friend, lifting him up and asking if he's okay. He smiles in relief as Satoshi gives a comforting cry and a nod. Then he sighs. If they can't even last 2 attacks against Ash, then they've got a long way to go before he's strong enough to beat Norman. And he's running out of time. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as we join back up with Sapphire. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.